Welcome back. Today we're going to be doing band rings, and what I like to do for students before they start working in silver is I like you guys to make something out of brass, and the brass actually comes from the door plates from the college when they replaced the doors. And the material that you'll be working with is about 20 gauge, and this is the plate. And so we will be taking and shearing off pieces to the width that we want our ring to be. And I've chosen something that's at about a 1/2 inch for my finger, nothing really wider than that because I've got stubby fingers. So we will be figuring our width and our length, and then using the shear to cut the strips that we needed. These are just practice band rings, so they can just be straight and flat to start with, but you can undulate the form. You can make it wider at the top, thinner at the bottom. And in the next video, I'll probably be showing you different sample rings that I've made over the years so that you can get some ideas. But we're just going to be making a simple little brass band ring that really doesn't have anything on it other than where we've soldered it together. And the idea is to not be able to see the joint. So that sense of infinity is all tied to wedding bands and the idea of them not being broken. So that is going to be our goal today, is to learn how to make a band ring, and once it's soldered together, not be able to see where the joint is. Okay. So the handout that I've given you guys has 3 ways to go about getting your measurements. I personally kind of like to use a paper pattern, which is what I'm going to do today, and that is the second one to do. The other way that you can do it is you can figure out the diameter of the ring finger and then multiply it by 3.14. So this is really great for the math people that like doing that kind of thing. And that should be, if we did each one of these ways of doing it, we should end up with the same ring size of every single one. I'm going to do the paper pattern one, but you also have an opportunity to use Harold O'Connor's book, the Jewelry Bench Reference Book, and I have it up here at my bench for you to look at. And this has gotten torn off, so we've just taped it back down. But this is a really nice chart that I like to use. Along the top here, it shows you the gauge metal that we're working with. And we're working with 20 gauge. So this is where we're going to be working from. And then say I want a size 7 ring, I'm going to come down across here, and I can see that it's 56.5 millimeters. Okay. So this takes into account the thickness of your metal in the length that you need. When you're thinking about doing one that you're going to use a paper pattern, we need to add the thickness to it. So the first thing that you guys will be doing is getting one of these ring measurers and looking for something that is the size that you want. And when you put it on and you find that it slips off and on pretty easily, that's probably what you want to go with. If you're in doubt, I always go a little bit smaller because I can stretch the ring up to make it bigger, but I would have to cut the joint open and make it smaller again. So on here, this is a 7 with a dash after it, so that's a 7.5 size ring. So I was close by saying a 7, but when I come down here, 7.5, I need 57.8. I'm going to write that down just so we can check that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the way that I like to measure band rings. Is I like to take a piece of paper that has some thickness to it. This is watercolor paper. And I like to just cut the width of my band ring. And we're just going to do straight ones today. Although you could do band rings that were fatter at the top. So that when you wrapped it around, it would be a more comfortable ring with a stone that's set on top. But we're today, for our sample ones, we're just going to use regular sheet. So now I've gotten the width that I want on it. Even though this edge is uneven, it'll still work. I want to find the middle of my ring, and I want to mark it like that. And so now I'm going to come over to this ring mandrel, and I'm going to find a size 7, and then I want a 7.5, so that's right there. I'm going to take and I'm going to line up my line with 7.5, and I'm going to wrap it around the mandrel, and then I'm going to mark it where it overlaps, which I'm looking for right there. And then I'm going to unfold it, and I'm going to draw that line there. So this is kind of a loose way of doing it, but I found that it works really well for me. Now what I have to do is that paper wrapped around that mandrel very easily, but a thicker piece of metal is not going to wrap around the same way. You're going to end up with probably a half size short. So what I like to do, and this is really good for people that are visual, is I like to just set the thickness of my metal down on there and mark it and add that thickness to my length. Okay, so just like that. If I had a ring shank that had different layers on it, where I had sweat soldered things onto it, I would probably have to make sure that I was choosing the thickest portion of my ring to make this happen. Okay, so I'm going to take this now, and I'm going to, with my millimeters, sit it down here, and I said it was 57.8. So there is 57, and then like 0.8 is right about there. So I'm gonna now just take and cut this, and then check again and see how close I am with the measurements from Harold's. So just that much longer. So I'm gonna go with this and see how it works out. So this is the way that I find my measurements. You can do it with the chart, or you can do it mathematically with using pi if you like. Remembering that you need to add the thickness of the metal to that number when you're done. Okay, so that's how we're going to choose our size. In my studio I have some of these, and this says size 7.5. And then I just have them on my workbench so that I don't have to go through this every time I have to make something for somebody. But that's how we're going to choose our size. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in on the shear, and we're going to shear our metal since it's straight edges. And I'll be back seeing you in the other room at the shear there.